Hey friends, it's Jessica from Three Rivers Homestead and long time no video. I wasn't able to put a video out last week. We just had a crazy time here at Three Rivers Homestead. We lost our power for a large portion of the week, and I just couldn't get a video edited and uploaded for you because life got in the way. And raising 8 children is my priority here, and it's a busy season of the year with everything going on in the homestead, so I hope you understand. But I'm back this week with a video, and I have lots of things to show you. As I mentioned, it's a busy time on the homestead and in the kitchen. I have an Azure Standard order that I want to share with you that we picked up this week. We're going to do some kitchen work. I was canning some Lima beans. I have some fruit extracts to show you. Also some fruit scrap vinegars, as well as some other family favorite recipes. And then on top of that, I'm going to give you kind of an update on what is going on in the garden and in other areas of the homestead. So if that is something that interests you, why don't you stick around, grab a cup of tea or something, put your feet up, and let's talk about what we were up to this week. All right, so we are back with my Azure Standard order. Why don't I go ahead and show you what we got? So I got 2 bags. These are each 10 pounds of the dairy-free, allergen-free chocolate chips. This is just for baking. We are completely out, so that will get us stocked up for a while. I also got 2 5-pound bags of almond flour. I've been using a lot more almond flour in my baking now that I'm doing the GAPS diet again, and so there's some recipes that I want to try and they call for almond flour, so I just needed to get stocked up on that. I got a little 1-pound package of citric acid. In a lot of my canning recipes, particularly with tomatoes in the summer, I use a little bit of citric acid just to ensure acidity levels are safe for water bath canning. And so every year at the beginning of the gardening season, I make sure that I stock up on that so that I have it for when I would like to can tomatoes. Next, we have just 5 pounds of the allergy-free white chocolate chips because sometimes my kids like to switch it up. Sometimes we'll use regular chocolate, and as you can see, a lot less of the time we are using white chocolate, but I just needed to have a little bit of that in the house. Back here, I don't use muffin cups quite often, but every once in a while I do like to make cupcakes, and these are the baking cups that I like to use. We compost them, and these are what I like, so just a few packages of that. We're kind of beyond muffin baking, the muffin baking years, because I have so many children that it would take me doing multiple batches of muffins to make enough for everybody, so I prefer to take my muffin recipes and just bake them in a large pan instead. But when I do want to make cupcakes and things, I need to have these in the house. I just got a couple packages of carrot seeds. I've had great results for the last 7 or 8 years using seeds that I purchased from Azure Standard. And I just used all my carrot seed up for planting in the spring. So I just wanted to be prepared for fall. And I bought a couple seed packets for that. Okay, Adam loves the flavor of ginger, and this is his favorite ginger brand. I've never bought this before. It's ginger juice, but I just thought that this would be good for him to add to some of the dishes that he likes to have a ginger flavor. And then, of course, we got his favorite sushi ginger. Adam likes to eat this. He doesn't just eat it with sushi. He eats it all the time with other dishes as well. Now this is something that's new that we're trying. Azure just created a whole line of coconut products, and as a dairy-free family, that's really exciting for us. I have never been able to find a recipe for homemade caramel topping that is dairy-free that I've liked, and so we're trying this out. I bought 3 little jars of it, and we're going to try it in some different recipes. The ingredients are just coconut kernel extract, and organic coconut syrup. And I thought that the kids would like this. I tend to avoid recipes that call for caramel because we can't do that dairy-free. So I'm excited that that'll give me the opportunity to try some new things out for the children. And this is another one of those new things that they offer. It's coconut water, And I bought this because I had been purchasing from Redmond Real Salt. They have a powder. It's an electrolyte powder. And I discovered that with my Crohn's disease, it was kind of upsetting my stomach. It was triggering a flare. And so I had to stop drinking my Relight powder. But I loved the taste of it. It was salty and sweet and fruit flavored, and it contained some coconut water powder. So I thought that I'm going to try to recreate that Redmond's Real Salt out of some homemade ingredients, salt, the coconut water, some fruit, and maybe some calcium carbonate or whatever that they use, and see if I can make a cheaper version that's homemade that my body likes a little more. Pistachios, we just got 5 pounds. Pistachios have become a fun snack that the children really enjoy, and I can get a better price on them purchasing them bulk, so we went ahead and got some of those. And then 2 packages of the little 5 pounds of the apple juice sweetened dried cranberries. We're about to enter salad season once our lettuce is mature here in the garden, and I like to add dried cranberries to my salads just for a little bit of a sweet fruit topping. Also things like broccoli salad, we add this, we eat a lot of it, and the kids will just have it in trail mix. So wanted to be prepared with that. Speaking of summer foods, we're going to be getting a lot of fresh veggies from the garden, and I always like to keep this stocked, this veggie urban dip mix. I pretty much buy it every time I purchase from Azure because we go through it a lot. To make a dairy-free dip, I just take homemade mayonnaise and I water it down a little bit, and I add a few scoops of this to it, and it makes us a vegetable dip that we can have that doesn't contain dairy, and so we really enjoy that. And then, of course, for grilling season, we need our Montreal steak seasoning. We put this on just about everything that we grill, our steaks and pork chops and even chicken legs. Next, over here, we have tomato paste. I got a case of this because I have used up all of my tomato paste that I preserved last year. And tomato paste is one thing that we use every week. I use 2 of these jars to make pizza. We have pizza once a week for the children. And so I've decided that with this year's tomatoes that I grow in the garden, I will prioritize making tomato paste so that I don't have to buy it. And I figure if we use 2 of these jars, that's probably about a half pint of sauce for the pizzas that we make. And if I do maybe 50 half pints preserved, that'll be a good minimum amount. So that's a goal for canning this year. But until we get to tomato season, I needed to stock up. So that'll get us through quite a few weeks, probably until we have tomatoes available in the garden. Next, we have 25 pounds of rolled oats. It's obvious what we use those for. I got 25 pounds of Lima Beans. We have been out of Lima Beans for a while, and my children love them just as like a side dish. And so I just wanted to get stocked up. I'll probably be canning a lot of these so that I have them ready to go on the shelf, and I can just warm them up as a side dish during the busy summer months when I want to just make a quick meal. And this was just a bonus blessing. I did not order this, but every once in a while, got a toy over here. Every once in a while, the Azure truck from a previous delivery has a bag of something that somebody didn't come pick up, or for whatever reason it's just there and they're trying to unload it. And so the driver had asked if anybody wanted buckwheat groats for 50% off, and I jumped on the offer because we love buckwheat. These ones are hulled, which is awesome. They go great through the grain mill and make a buckwheat flour, and we make buckwheat pancakes and buckwheat waffles quite often. It's a great gluten-free option. I'm not supposed to eat buckwheat on GAPS diet, but I do find that my body can tolerate it in small amounts if I just don't eat it that frequently. So I'm very excited. I got this 25-pound bag for 50% off. It's just a huge blessing that I wasn't anticipating, but just made picking up this order even better. So very excited. We're going to get all of this put away, and then we will not need to place an order until probably August. I forgot to show you the plant starts that I had also ordered. I've been ordering plant starts from Azure for 10 years, and they have never let me down. I typically order herbs from them. a lot of perennial herbs, and every year I just kind of expand and grab a few more because I can't turn down plants. I'm the crazy plant lady, so if they're selling starts, I'm buying some. And so I just got some things like some mullein and another comfrey start because the excavators had destroyed some of mine. And we're just going to add to our herb garden and expand it a little bit this year. All right, on to the next project. So that 25-pound bag of lima beans, you're probably wondering, what does someone do with 25 pounds of lima beans? Well, I can them. And so I started this week and went ahead and got some on the pantry shelves. And I've done a full video before on how I can dried beans, and I'm going to link it for you in the description, and that gives you a lot more detailed instructions. But basically, the short description of it is I start with about a third of the jar full of dried beans. I add a little bit of apple scrap or apple cider vinegar to each jar, and then I fill it the rest of the way with water, and I let them sit and soak overnight. I do this to increase the digestibility of these beans. It helps break down the phytic acid. You can see that the beans swell, and that's why you only fill them a third of the way, because once they swell, they will fill the whole jar. And so the next morning then, I drain all of that soaking water out, rinse the beans, and refill them with clean water. Make sure I get all of the air bubbles out of those jars because they can trap air down there in the bottom. And then we're going to go ahead and pressure can these. So I get my lids on the top, and you can check out a link in the description and get 10% off of your lids using my code. But we're going to pressure can these for 50 minutes at 11 psi. And it's really that simple. And then I will have shelf-stable cooked lima beans. And you may think, why do you go to the trouble to pressure can these? Why not just cook them, fresh each time? But summer gets very busy, and I just want to have quick side dishes. So I can just grill some meat, open up a jar of these and heat them up, maybe cut a salad from the garden, and then my meal is done. So this is purely about convenience. And they don't look the prettiest in the jars, as you can see, but if I empty the contents of that jar in a pan, add a little bit of bacon grease or something like that, they taste delicious. And that is how we eat our lima beans. All right, on to the next project. Last August, when I was doing my Every Bit Counts challenge, one of the things I preserved was some fruit, and I did it by preserving it in vodka to make fruit extracts. And it's been since August now, and these extracts are ready. So this is the week that I decided to go ahead and drain out the fruit from the vodka. And we had done some freeze-dried orange slices in the vodka. We did some freeze-dried blueberries, and we also did freeze-dried peppermint from the garden. And I do have to say, this was the first year that I had used freeze-dried items to make my extracts. In previous years, I had used just fresh raw fruit or fresh herbs, and the freeze-dried results were much superior. And I think it has to do with the fact that the moisture content of the fruit and herbs was removed, and so you got a much more concentrated flavor in your vodka extract, and these just turned out amazing. I made sure to switch my strainer here between the mint and the fruit because I didn't want any of that mint flavor mixing in with my fruit extracts, but you can just see the color of these is just so vibrant. And when I would make extracts from the raw or the fresh fruit, the color was different. It was always more of a gray or a brown or green color, but you can see that the extracts really took on the color of the fruit, and the taste is just amazing. You can smell the citrus, you can smell the blueberry. So I will always be using freeze-dried items to make these extracts. You may be wondering what I plan to do with these. Well, I use them just like you do things like almond extract or vanilla extract or cinnamon extract. They just are added to our baking. I use the peppermint extract when I make marshmallows. I use a little bit of the blueberry extract when I make my blueberry muffins for just some extra flavor. Citrus extract is great in things like cakes. And these are just a wonderful addition to the pantry. So I'm going to get these labeled up, put them on the pantry shelves, and we'll be making more extracts in the future, and I'll take you along for that. All right, something fun that I wanted to show you that happened in the kitchen this week. This was a meal that we made, and I've shown you my French toast casserole several times before, but this week we decided to put a little bit of a different spin on it. I am trying to use up canned goods from last summer, and I decided I was going to use up canned pie filling. I have peach pie filling here, and I'm going to add it to my French toast casserole. Or some of you that live in the UK have told me this is like bread pudding to you, and so that's what we're making. I have my breadcrumbs in a greased pan, and then I have my eggs, and then I am just going to add this quart of peach pie filling to my bowl of eggs here. We're going to get that all mixed together, and that is what we're going to use to make this, I guess, French toast casserole or bread pudding. And so literally all we're doing is just whisking that pie filling and the eggs together. We're going to pour it over the bread, and then we're going to bake it on 350 for about 30 to 40 minutes. And this has been such a hit. The kids love this so much more than just the plain French toast casserole that just uses eggs and maybe milk. And so I just wanted to share this with you in case you're like me and you have a lot of pie filling that you canned last year that's sitting on the shelf and you need a good way to use that up. You should try this. It is delicious. You just want to make sure that you get all of that bread covered. You bake it up. It smells amazing. You can use any kind of pie filling that you have, apple pie filling, pear pie filling, blueberry. It's all going to taste amazing in this. And then you're going to serve it. We served it with a protein. We had a little bacon that day, or sometimes we'll do scrambled eggs. And the kids absolutely loved this. So just sharing something that we've been loving and that has been working for us. All right, so now we're going to move on to the next kitchen project for the week. I, as usual, was making a batch of broth. I make broth at least once a week. We have a lot of bones in the freezer that we're trying to use up, and typically I pressure can my broth to get it shelf stable, but on this particular day, Adam was having an oral surgery done, and I was waiting to get a call to come pick him up, and I didn't want to start my pressure canner and have to leave in the middle of a batch. So I thought, I'm going to freeze them. And so I'm using something called super cubes to freeze it, and I've never shown you these before. I wanted to show you how easy it is to freeze things in these super cubes. They're silicone molds, and they come in different sizes. I have some that are 2 cups and some that are 1 cup size. And then we even have some that are smaller that I'm using to make baby-sized broth, because broth, whether chicken broth or beef broth, even veggie broth, it's one of the very first foods that I introduced to my babies. And Hannah turned 5 months old last week, and so we are reaching the point that she is going to start eating broth probably in the next 2 months. I typically start around 7 months old, sometimes 8 months old with my babies on broth. And so I'm going to show you how I am freezing that for her so that it'll be easy for her to eat. So as you can see, I got all of my broth strained out and poured into my silicone molds here. They come with lids and they stack up, and I just put them in the freezer, and then we're going to freeze them. And once they're all done, then I can package them up in freezer bags to make them a little easier to store. So as I mentioned, this is how I'm storing it for Hannah. This container from Super Cubes is actually meant for freezing breast milk, but I'm pouring broth in it, and then each of these cubes is the perfect size to put in a little mesh feeder. They sell mesh feeders that you can put little cubes of baby food or ice cubes in for teething babies, and then the baby can just put that in their mouth and suck on it and chew on it, and it gives them relief from their ouchy sore gums while they're teething. And also as they kind of suck on it, they'll take in the broth or whatever other liquid that you put in them. So this is really convenient. As I mentioned, I got these from Super Cubes, and I'll link in the description where you can find these, but they just pop right out and then they're ready to go. Other than a mesh feeder, they're also the perfect size. I could take a couple of these cubes and put them in a bottle and thaw them out, and then she can just drink her broth straight from the bottle. So I've done an entire video before on how I introduce solid foods to my babies. It's a little different than other people may introduce solids. I follow basically the GAPS diet protocol for feeding my baby. So that would start with broth, and then we introduce foods in the same way you do for the GAPS diet if you were doing the intro diet. So check out that video if you're interested in seeing how I plan to start solid foods for Hannah. Then for the rest of the family, if I want to make a soup or something in the future, I have frozen this broth in 1 cup and 2 cup cubes. They stack in my freezer bags like this, and I can just put them right on the freezer shelf. It's a really, really convenient way to store your broth if you don't want to pressure can it. So just wanted to share that with you this week so you could check that out if that's something that you're interested in. Okay, and our final kitchen project for this week, you guys know I love to make fruit scrap vinegar. I've done many videos on making fruit scrap vinegar. This is a batch of apple scrap vinegar. You can see the top of it is showing some yeast. There's not mold growth, so this is safe to use. I'm just straining out my apple scraps and getting them into a jar. But you can make fruit scrap vinegar out of any kind of fruit, not just apples. So I've done it before out of peaches and peach pits even. I've done it out of pears. And so this week I was going to try it out of something different. We decided to use pineapples, and I'm going to show you how that is going for us. So straining that out, once you strain the fruit out, you just put a cloth over the top, and you get that up on a shelf to continue fermenting. Now, pineapple, we've been eating a lot of pineapple lately with the children, and I cut that up and serve it for the children, and then I save the cores, and the cores are what we're going to use to make pineapple scrap vinegar. Here's a batch that I started about 3 weeks ago. So all I did was I took the cores after I cut my fruit, and I put it into a quart-sized jar like this, and then I took mother of vinegar from a previous batch of vinegar that I've made. If you don't have a mother of vinegar, you can just pour a little bit of vinegar in. But that's a mother of vinegar right there that I'm pointing to. It's kind of like a slimy pancake kind of thing. You could just use vinegar from a previous batch if you don't have that. And then you can see a new mother forms on the top as it's been brewing for 3 weeks. So what I've done is put that mother of vinegar in the jar with the 2 cores of pineapple. We're going to fill it the rest of the way with water, and then we're just going to put it on a shelf with a coffee filter on top and let it ferment. And then after 2 weeks like this, I'm going to strain out the old pineapple cores, and then what I'm left with is a new mother and some pineapple scrap vinegar, and it smells amazing. And then we put the coffee filter back on it, just like I did with the apple scrap vinegar. We put it back on a shelf, and we let it continue to ferment for another 3 to 6 months. Up there you can see all of my ferments that I'm working on in various stages, and those are going to be delicious. So you're probably wondering, what on earth do you do with all this vinegar? You're always making vinegar, Jessica. Well, we love it. It's so good for you. It's a probiotic boost, kind of like making kombucha. We just add a little bit of vinegar to our water, and it's really good for you. We add it to a lot of our animals' water to give them a probiotic boost. Whenever we're soaking grains or nuts or other things that you need to soak to properly digest, we use vinegar as our acid in the soaking process, and we also make things like salad dressing out of it. So having various flavors of fruit in your vinegars just makes tastier salad dressing. So that is how we use all of that vinegar. As you can see, the children are still hard at work doing their schoolwork. Things are definitely ramping up outdoors at this time of year on the homestead. But that doesn't mean that we can neglect our studies. We're still hard at work doing our homeschool work. Our homeschool year has not finished yet. So we're just keeping busy and trying to keep the little boys entertained with their studies. But as I mentioned, it is definitely the time of year where we are working hard outside. The weather is finally cooperating. We're getting long breaks through the rain to kind of get work done. Thankfully, we had a long enough break in the rain that the ground could dry up enough for Adam to get the tractor back to the garden. Sometimes we have to worry about him getting stuck if the ground is too wet. But last weekend, he was able to we had 5 yards of dirt that I needed him to get over the garden fence into the garden for me to use to top off last year's garden beds that I had built. And then I showed you several videos ago that we were building some new garden beds to add to this year's garden. And this is the soil that we were using to fill those beds. And so it was just a busy, busy weekend last weekend, and thankfully the weather cooperated. So Adam was driving the tractor for me and getting the dirt over the fence. I don't trust myself enough to drive the tractor. I'm not very good at it. So I'm glad that I have Adam to do that for me. And then once he got it into the garden, I was using a shovel and getting my garden work out, filling beds. And so I am counting on garden work to help me lose this baby weight. I still have quite a bit to go from, 8 pregnancies over the years. And so gardening is the way that I focus on getting in shape. So definitely getting my workout, filling those beds. What I wanted to show you was something new that I added to my garden this year. I decided to clear this little space in the corner for my children. And I bought this cute little pop-up tent from Amazon so that my children have a place that is out of the sun, that they can come and play in the garden and spend some time with me while I do my work. Because as you guys know, a large garden, it takes a lot of time. And as a mom, I don't want to be away from my children working in the garden. I want to have them out there with me so that I can kill 2 birds with 1 stone and get the work done that I need to do in the garden while also, keeping an eye on my children and spending time with them. So this tent right here was my solution to that problem. And at this point in the morning, this area of the garden is shaded, but as the sun continues to move through the sky, this area is in full sun. So thankfully, this tent has a nice little cover on it that creates a shade spot for the little ones to go in, even for Hannah to nap in. If I rock her out there and get her to sleep, I can put her down out there in the tent and keep an eye on her while I weed and do any of the other garden work that I need to get done. So I'm very excited to have this set up. This is going to make gardening so much more pleasant for me this year. And I just really enjoy having the children out there with me. So grabbing a box of toys, getting the little boy set up so that I could get hard to work, finishing the tasks that I needed to do on this day to get the rest of the garden planted. Gardening with a lot of small children is no easy task. It can be very difficult to do. Our garden used to be about 4,000 square feet, and I had to cut the size in half because I just couldn't keep up with it and give my little ones the attention that they needed, whether it's with school or just playing with them or taking care of the baby. And so what we did over the years is I cut my garden size down to just 2,000 square feet. And I've had to come up with solutions to make things easier for me. And so using things like landscape fabric and raised beds and things like that have made it more, doable for me to be the mom that I want to be and also grow the food that I want to grow in the garden. And then this tent and having the children next to me is another solution this year that is going to make it easier. I will say that having these clear garden paths with the landscape fabric also makes it easier for me to allow the children to be out in the garden with me. When my garden was in ground, I would lose a lot of plants to little ones trampling over spots that they weren't supposed to be walking. But having things in raised beds and then having the paths with the landscape fabric makes it so that I don't have to worry and the children can run around in the garden and they can play and be right at my side. And they're not going to ruin any plants or undo all of my hard work. So this is the season of gardening that we're in. It isn't the prettiest having a garden with the landscape fabric and the metal raised beds and things, but we make it work and we do what we have to be a good mom and to get all of the work done that we need to get done. So I love having my helpers. On this day, we were planting flowers because a garden isn't just about growing food. It's also about creating beauty and having beautiful flowers for the pollinators. And so the children enjoyed picking out their favorite seed packets and helping me scatter those seeds. At this point of the year, I pretty much have everything planted in the garden except for my tomatoes and peppers. I just need the nighttime temperatures to remain above 50 degrees, and then I can get my beautiful plants that I started from seed over the winter in their permanent homes. For now, we're doing the shuffle and bringing things inside overnight until it's safe to plant them out. And so that is what we have been up to this week. Just lots of fun things, making memories as a family and just enjoying the sunshine. It's such a beautiful time of year, and we are truly enjoying it. Little Miss Hannah, as I mentioned, turned 5 months old, and she is rolling around all over the place and just becoming much more alert and playful. We are truly enjoying it. Also enjoying finally having the excavation project done. Now that the garden is planted, we can turn our energy toward finishing the cellar. That was kind of the whole point of that excavation project. We needed to waterproof the cellar. And now that that is done, we just need to paint and build the shelving and build the cold room. And we're going to build a dumbwaiter down there so that we can bring things upstairs. And we just needed to get through getting the garden in to clear up some time so that we can move on to that project. So lots of fun content coming to you in the future. But for now, that's about it for this week. This video is coming out on Mother's Day, and so I just want to wish all of you mothers who are watching this a happy Mother's Day. Mothering is just the joy of my life. I just love being a mother more than anything else, and I just enjoy sharing my motherhood journey with you. So until next week, bye friends.